Hi, welcome to the channel. My name is Kubeir, and it is another amazing episode for the weekly roundup. Today being the Saturday, this being 10:30 a.m., just past 10:30 a.m. So, welcome to the channel. Welcome to this week's episode for the weekly roundup. And before we start wasting your time, let's get on with this. And as usual, we start with the quote of the week, and that is "The hope fills the holes of my frustration in my heart" by Emmanuel Cleaver. Well, I mean, a very wise man, I would say, because he obviously identifies the reason and how your hopes are something which will always fill the holes that have been created by the frustration. I definitely agree with this one. Well, this is the Canadian Immigration Weekly Roundup, as we have set up, and you are watching Ask Kubeir channel on YouTube. Starting with what would be included in today's discussion. Obviously, we will talk about the latest PNPs and the draws that have happened. We will definitely talk about express entry and what has happened in the third quarter of this year, or rather, what we can anticipate. We will talk about Quebec as what is going on there in terms of their programs, considering they are a separate immigration program. And obviously, we will cover some, other news and what else is happening in the field of immigration. So, starting with the provincial nominee programs, the first one, as usual, the usual suspect, the usual culprit that's always there on our weekly roundup, and that is British Columbia. As usual, as we have seen, they are very consistent in conducting their draws. So they have invited roughly how much? What do I say here? Oh, it doesn't say the number of people. 108, of course. 108 people were invited. Tech workers were invited under the PNP draw. And this basically was the BC PNP Tech draw that happened, or tech program that they have. Under this, the eligible candidates would have an eligible job offer from an employer in British Columbia. And they obviously would have work experience, which is listed in their tech NOC demand list. Next we had was, did we create two of these? British Columbia, and then again we have British Columbia. All right. So then obviously, yeah, there you go. Nova Scotia. Nova Scotia was a bit different because Nova Scotia has been in hiding for some time. For whatever be the reason, Nova Scotia has not conducted many draws this year, but it was surprising to see, or rather, actually, it was a pleasant surprise to see Nova Scotia making a comeback with their draws. And but it wasn't really something which most of us would have expected. And this was conducted under the labor market priorities draw on the 7th of October. They invited candidates who have a valid LMIA job offer from an employer in Nova Scotia. And they also invited carpenters under the NOC code 7271 with relevant experience, obviously, otherwise they wouldn't be 7271, and language proficiency score of at least CLB5. And then we had the Ontario draw. I'm not sure why I'm not able to see my first slide. And that's pretty strange. Just let's take a look at this one. All right, so Ontario conducted a draw on the 7th of October. 162 French speakers in the express entry were invited here, and in this particular draw, the score, or the profiles that were invited, were restricted within the CRS score range of 461 and 467. For some reason, not for some reason, I mean, we already know the reason why Ontario does that. And Ontario has been identifying people within a specific CRS score range in most of their programs, which are related to express entry. And obviously, this French speaker stream is also related to express entry. So they will always pick out people from the pool. Not only that, they also conducted another draw. And let me just bring that on the screen here. For some reason, we have missed out on that slide. Okay, let's see if I can bring that here. There you go. That was the Ontario nominee program draw that happened. There you go. And this particular draw happened on the 6th of October, whereby Ontario invited roughly 400 people and they invited these NOC codes. 18 different NOC codes were invited, including some banking codes, some management codes, some HR codes were also invited. And again, this was the third in the series of the repeated target occupation draws. They haven't conducted a tech draw for some time, actually since I think July this year. So that was again a bit disappointing one from Ontario. The people were looking forward to or hoping that they would come back and conduct their tech draw as well. But as you would note, that the reason why this may not have happened is because in a tech draw, uh, there are only 6 NOC codes that are invited, but in a general targeted occupation draw, they invite much more. In this case, they invited 18 NOC codes, which was probably to then balance out. Okay, then what do we have in express entry? Well, we don't have much because no draw happened, nothing happened there, no changes are anticipated. But then there was this article that has appeared in CIC News, which is quite a credible and a respectable publication in terms of the immigration news. It is when we say CIC News, it is not an official newsletter from IRCC. CIC News is a private publication by one of the law firms in Canada. So they issue these newsletters, and they make these announcements, or they update by basing on certain facts and certain information they have. Well, as far as they were concerned, and they made this announcement that they have received some internal memo that they have obtained through the access to information request, and we will talk about that in a bit. We'll go to their website and check it out in detail. But based on that, it is also was established that in this 3 months period, July, August, September, IRCC issued almost 21,000 invitations, which again is not bad. It's pretty high number of invitations, and that they have held 12 draws in the last quarter. 7 were specifically for PNP, 5 were for CEC, and 81% of all invitations have gone to the CEC candidates. It's a no-brainer. This has been happening for a long time now. I think last 10 months. Well, in the Quebec news, what did we have there? We have the fact that they invited 536 candidates. Now, for people who do not know, Quebec has a separate immigration system, and they obviously are in an agreement with the federal government. They have absolutely a different immigration system where they are absolutely free to invite who they wish to invite. And once they have approved a candidate, then IRCC cannot refuse that candidate unless there is an inadmissibility issue. So under the assessment factors, Quebec has the final say. And in this particular draw these 2 rounds of invitations that they conducted in September, they invited a total of 536 people, and they invited people largely who had a valid job offer, again a valid job offer, in the Montreal, or rather outside the Montreal area. What do we have in the other news? Well, in other news, some of the jobs in demand, if some of you were interested. Well, the New Brunswick issued a list of NOC codes that were quite of interest to them in terms of, so you can always freeze the screen or take a screenshot and go through those occupation codes if it helps you at all. And similarly, excuse me, Prince Edward Islands also sort of listed some of the occupations that have been indicated as being in demand. This does not necessarily mean that these will be the NOC codes that they will be picking up in their express entry draws or any kind of draws, but these are basically in relation to their labor market stream as to whatever is happening over there, or labor market conditions as to whatever is happening in those specific provinces. Well, that's basically it as far as the weekly roundup is concerned. We will continue this session today. Obviously, we will talk about different things. We will also take questions and answers. But if you wish to connect with us, obviously, social media channels are all there for you. Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, of course, Twitter, if you wish to follow us there. And if you are still not following us, then obviously, please subscribe to the channel. It just goes without saying, because that way you can be sure that you're getting quality content. If you still haven't followed us on Instagram, then you most definitely should. And yeah, that's just about it. So let's get rid of this particular screen so we can start talking about something much more important and relevant. Obviously, not that this was not important and relevant, because we do this weekly roundup so that a lot of people who are quite interested in what's happening with the field in the field of immigration in Canada, and they might have missed out on few updates, they might have missed out on few changes. So this quick summary helps them understand whatever they might have missed out on. And obviously, for today's session, I think one of the more important ones that you want to talk about is this article. And this has created a bit of, let's say, some people have been, worried. Some people have been thinking what exactly is going on. So we will talk about this particular article today. And let me just set the screen so we know what it is. So this is obviously CEC News uh, website, and I'm basically just sharing that exactly as it is on it. And they issued this, or rather, this article came out, I think, a couple of days back on the 8th of October. And if you were to read the article, it basically talks about uh, an internal memo that they have obtained using the access to information and access to information and privacy channel. And they were able to obtain this memo that they have received, based on which this article has been written, was obtained on the 8th of June, or rather, this memo was on the 8th of June, and that's where it is. Yeah. And it basically indicates the different plan, or the different uh, steps that IRCC was taking or was intending to take in relation to the ongoing express entry draws. Now, based on this article, obviously, whatever was indicated on that memo actually did happen. So, obviously, there is no reason to doubt that this memo is not what it says it is, or that there was something that IRCC did not do. Obviously, if this memo was dated in June, on the June 8th, and it did speak about IRCC wanting to conduct big draws of 6,000 each, then they did conduct draws of 6,000 each in June and July. And earlier they had also conducted a draw starting in April with 6,000. And the memo that this memo was indicated was created to seek approval of the large draws to keep going. Okay. Now this basically this also indicates that whatever people are talking about in terms of whatever is the quota for the ITAs doesn't hold, because, as I've said earlier, IRCC is free to do what they wish to do in terms of how they see the program to be of larger benefit to Canadian economy, Canadian public, Canadian interests at large. So if they needed to conduct additional draws, they will conduct additional draws. The quotas are basically irrelevant for that purpose. The quotas in terms of ITA quota. So people keep talking about these ITA quotas, that this only so many ITAs will be issued, only so many can be issued. Of course, there is going to be a limit on how many ITAs they will issue. It's not going to be a blanket open season to issue as many as they want. But at the end of the day, they will still be able to tweak them into increasing the number of draw sizes or reducing the number of draw sizes as and when they want to achieve the target that they want. Now, as this talks about, there was a 13th February large draw, which basically helped with meeting the target of 141,000 decisions that they intend to make from the CEC applications this year. What was contradictory in this particular thing was, it said somewhere that the department estimates CEC applicants, there is a 4 to 8 month window from invitation to decisions. Now, or rather, invitation to admission at this point of time, meaning ECOPR, because they're able to award ECOPRs to people who are already inside Canada. So if people invited were after, let's say, July, then it indicated that the people may have a smaller chance of being admitted this year. But this again doesn't make sense, because later on, again in the same article, or again in the same memo, it indicated that as long as IRCC wrote that it would finalize and admit the vast majority of CEC applicants in 2021 who applied by September 2021. So this makes me wonder, in the same memo, how could IRCC be contradicting themselves? At one point of time, it says that they would not be able to finalize applications if they were not applied by July. And then it goes on to say that if they applied by September 2021, then vast majority of CEC applicants would be finalized. Well, again, Since I haven't seen the memo, I don't know what the memo exactly included. We won't really know what exactly it said. It could also be the interpretation of what was included and what was said that could sort of raise those questions. But as I said, IRCC, obviously, the operations department of IRCC will at all times continue to look at different factors, continue to decide as and how they wish to tweak their draw size, because then it also talks about the department has anticipated that the invitation round size would drop to about 2,500 CEC candidates bi-weekly after July. So it is indicating CEC candidates bi-weekly after July. Following this, there were two draws, again 3001 of 2500, and then from there on, the draws have continued to drop in the size. More importantly, so this is about the draws, and this is, and we will sort of break this down. We will sort of discuss a bit more on this. But what I want to talk about is something else here, and that is what was I looking for? Just give me a moment because I keep losing that information while I am scrolling through scrolling through this article. I can't find it. Well, I can't find it. Well, if you were to read this article, this also says that in order to finalize the applications, IRCC had borrowed the staff from different departments or from different network offices, which basically meant that because the priority was more on the processing of CEC applications, they obviously held back on other applications. But at the end of the whole thing, the whole article, I mean, no matter what it says or what it tells you, at the end of the whole thing, it still comes back to say that there is no way to say that the draws will not happen or federal skilled worker draws will not happen, and that they would not issue the COPRs of people whose applications have been finalized. What I'm trying to say to you here is, okay, so that was a lot of information, and forgive me if I sort of strayed around a bit, because I was sort of trying to pick out the points as I was reading through it so that I could sort of share that with you and my views on that. First bit, it's a disclaimer. This is my personal interpretation and personal views, so please don't come back and create a rant as to why did I say this and why did I not say that. I'm just reading it and I'm telling you what I understand from it. Okay, this article talks about a memo which was issued on the 6th of June. So understand what I'm trying to say. Because it was issued on 6th of June, at that point of time, pre-18 or rather post-18th March COPR holders were not allowed to travel to Canada. So the travel was restricted. Vaccination numbers were still not clear. The COVID was still rearing, and there was this flight ban from India. All these situations existed. And at that point of time, nobody could make an intelligent guess as to when all these restrictions would be eased. So this memo, based on the 6th of June, obviously had plans and what they wanted to do with regards to CEC, with regards to the other aspects of the express entry. This article will also talk to you about why did they go ahead and choose profiles with the score of 350. So there were two draws with the range of 357 and I think 362 kind of range, and they said that they identified that people at the score at 350 probably had a college degree and a better experience versus the scores at 380 and 400, which, to be very honest, I did not understand. But then I haven't seen the internal memo. I don't really know what all details or additional data analysis it included, so can't really comment on that as to why would they choose 350 and not 400. Why would they analyze that profiles at 350 had a better qualification, better education, better work experience than the profiles at 380 or 400. So I couldn't really get to the bottom of that. But as I said, this is an article based on that, and the article will only obviously give you salient points from that particular internal memo. So until we see that memo, or until somebody else who has also obtained that memo brings it out on the social media or brings it out in the open, we won't really know. Now, this does indicate that they were extremely interested in wanting to get these CEC candidates or finalize them because they wanted to achieve their target. Last year, mind you, they did not achieve their immigration quota target. It was, I think, only 52% achieved, 48% was not achieved. And then this year, they have gone ahead and made these huge changes. One was the big draw that happened, CEC draw, 27,332 on 13th of February. And then there was this TR to PR pathway, 90,000 people being invited in that. And obviously, if you are a French speaker, then there was no quota there. So, this could have well gone into 100,000 people easily, as in what they were calculating. And all of this contributes to the immigration quota. It's not like these numbers are coming out of thin air. This will contribute to the same immigration targets. It's not like they have a target of 400,000 and they will go ahead and take 800,000 this year. It won't sit very well. Not that they are meeting that target. Anyways, if you see the figures for this year, they still need to finalize a lot of applications before they can meet even this year's quota or this year's target. So understanding that there has been this huge big push in wanting to finalize the CEC applications. Based on that, apparently, and that's what the memo also indicates, and you can always go back and read that article, cicnews.com, I think it's available on that. Now, it also indicates that IRCC borrowed or had staff who were working in different network offices to help with the processing of the CEC applications, which basically could very well would have meant that that they would have removed people who would have otherwise processed your regular federal skilled worker applications, or people whose applications would have been processed in normal circumstances. So if that was the case, then obviously that is one of the bigger reasons why we have not seen much chunk of PPRs flowing through for people who have been waiting. But as and how, and I keep indicating that this memo was for the 6th of June, and after that, a lot of things have changed, huge changes have happened. I'm sure as and how in due course of time, we will find out, we will figure out more. I mean, I'm sure now that this has become a thing that we can request for these internal memos from IRCC, more and more people will continue to request for these memos. We will understand much better as to what all is going on there, or what all has been going on in order to trigger the kind of things that we are facing today. All this being said, keep in mind that this was of 6th of June, 21st of June, they allowed all COPR holders, regardless of pre-18 March, post-18 March, to travel to Canada. 7th September, then they even allowed discretionary travel. So all those reasons that they would have been holding on to make these plans basically no longer exist. And that brings me back to the same rhetoric and the same speculation, prediction, whatever, as to why federal skilled worker draws are not happening. Honestly speaking, I don't know anymore. I have stopped, trying to figure out what could be the possible reason. It doesn't make sense to me anymore. I'm sure IRCC has better plans, and as and when they are ready to conduct the draws, they probably will. I was always hopeful until the third quarter, but that did not happen. So it all fell flat on my face, and that's all right. It's all part of the whole process of trying to figure out what exactly is going on, so that you could sort of at least understand it better. But if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. In this case, it did not. Federal skilled worker draws did not happen. The fingers are still crossed. Every single week, I will continue to hope, continue to pray and expect that the draws will happen, because that's the only way I am, and that's the only way I can be in terms of being hopeful. As far as the COPRs are concerned, or as far as the passport requests are concerned, well, as expected, the trickle had started, or rather has started. I'm sure whoever is following already knows, can already see. A lot of passport requests have come in. But again, by and large, from what we have seen, most of the passport requests came either for people who were already in the US, they were in Singapore, I think they were also in Hong Kong. Hong Kong visa office also released some passport requests, and also people who had a nomination. Okay, so either they were Ontario nomination, Saskatchewan nomination, in some cases Alberta nomination. So these are people who these are the large chunks of people who have received their passport request. But in addition to that, there has also been people who had no nomination, and they have also started receiving their passport request. So again, that keeps the hope alive, number one. Number two, earlier, again, to the same spokesperson from the same media release, IRCC had mentioned that they intend to communicate with all COPR holders whose COPRs have expired. By 31st of October, they would get into communication with them and tell them what are the steps forward in order to get them new passport requests or new COPRs, so they could then travel to Canada. And we have seen a large change, large movement in that aspect. A lot of people whose COPRs had expired are now receiving it, or rather are receiving ultimatum email, as a lot of people have coined that term. though there is no legal aspect. I mean, there is no legal aspect to it, but people have termed it. So we will go with that so everybody knows what we're talking about. So this ultimatum email, a lot of people are receiving it, most are receiving it, and hopefully they would keep that promise of completing this by 31st of October so that everybody whose COPRs had expired, they would have received it and then they would know exactly what's going on. Now, if at all IRCC was interested in completing their quota, all they had to do was release the passport requests or complete the applications that are almost finalized. The data that I have, unfortunately, which I can't share because I don't have the authority to share that is somebody else's private data, that shows that and that's where I have it here, that shows that the inventory that they have, and that was obtained in the month of July, that information from IRCC, showed that they hardly had any applications pending as far as federal skilled workers are concerned. But then I would assume that they would be doing that because the last draw for federal skilled worker or all program draws was on the 23rd of December with 468. After that, there hasn't been any federal skilled worker draws. And it has been almost 10 months. And by now, obviously, they should have completed all the applications. So from that report, that shows the inventory that IRCC is holding of the pending applications, which is approximately 50,000, give or take few, that most of the applications, except a few, are already ready. They're ready to be approved, but obviously for quite a large majority of them, the medicals have expired or that decision need to be taken. So I expect to see huge chunks of passport requests coming in as and when they decide to open those floodgates. I think at this point of time, for some reason, they are still concentrating on clearing as many CEC applications. Therefore, you are seeing a lot of CEC passport requests, or not passport requests, CEC EOPRs coming in a span of 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, and they're like really, really moving very quickly with that. And so as and when they do revert back to sending back those people who they have, or rather those staff they've pulled back to process the CEC applications back to their offices, back to their normal duties, then we would start seeing bigger, larger chunks of passport requests processing through. That is my interpretation from whatever I've read. So this is basically what has been happening. This is what is going on, and this is what we have been reading and keeping keeping our eyes on. Yes, a lot of speculations. Yes, a lot of hopeful predictions, but all of them based on whatever we get to read, whatever these ATIP notes we get to read from, or the documents that get released from IRCC. All of that sort of comes from these leading indicators that we read up. I mean, no consultant, no lawyer, no matter who they are, what they say, no agent, no expert has any internal information, okay, unless they are working for IRCC directly or the Minister of Immigration. Apart from these people, nobody else knows exactly when IRCC is going to do what they wish to do. So all of us can only make sometimes intelligent, sometimes silly and stupid speculations, predictions, guesses based on all this release notes that we see. So that's basically all I wanted to share with you and talk to you about. But thank you so much for joining in.